offensive 2025 NFL draft prospects that we're excited to see, that you need to be watching when the Senior Bowl kicks off this week. That and more on today's episode of the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast.
You are Locked On NFL Draft, your daily podcast covering the NFL Draft. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast, your daily podcast covering your favorite draft prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your boy, Damian Parson. I am an offensive draft analyst over with Bleacher Report, and that's my guy, Keith Sanchez. He's a director of scouting over at the Draft Network and 2019 national champion for those LSU Tigers. Guys, we have a fun show, and thank you for tapping in with us every single day and being our everydayers. We have a fun show for you. Senior Bowl offensive prospects that we're excited to see now that it is Senior Bowl week. Quarterbacks, wide receivers, and tight ends, and those running backs. Who's going to stand out? We're going to get into all of that coming up next. Super Bowl 59 is here, and there's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. New customers can bet just $5, and if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. Quarterbacks to watch, Keith. I think the guy that I'm excited to see the most got to be Jalen Milroe out of Alabama, Keith. And this is a guy that I wanted him to go back to school because I felt like more reps would have been better for him. But at the same time, hey, if you're going to come out, go to the Senior Bowl. Go to one of these all-star games and showcase what you can do and prove to us that you are, like, make your case. A 6'2", 225 pounds, dynamic, explosive runner with a lively arm. Go show us that you can play from the pocket when you need to and make those plays. Like, you don't have to be a full-blown pocket passer, but we know at the Senior Bowl, it's not as the practices, you're not going to be running around the way you would do in the live game. So being able to play within structure, make those reads quickly, efficiently, and everything from the pocket to where you are that true dual threat guy, I think that's going to do wonders. If he has a great week down here in Mobile, Keith, or in Mobile overall, if he can do that, I think that puts him in a spot where with his tools and traits, somebody's going to want to buy in as a team. We've seen it, right? We've seen it. Will Levis getting bought in, Anthony Richardson, Jamarcus Russell. We see a lot of guys with just high-end tools that teams said, listen, I could coach him to get to his ceiling. And I think Jalen Milroe is that guy that a strong week in Mobile, it changes everything for him.
Yeah, no, that's the guy first, who I was going to go with first as far as quarterbacks to watch at the Senior Bowl, like you said, because of the tools. But I think the part that gets understated with Jalen is that has a bunch of tools, but he hasn't played good football. Now, this guy has played good football. Like, we have to give him credit. He's played in the SEC for 2 years. There are throws on there that make you go, wow. Like, he's played good football. It's just that he's had moments, right? He's had moments where there's ID and blitzes. And honestly, you look at the Michigan game, that was offensive line situations, right? Like, so I want to see him. I agree with you. I want to see him operate independent of what Alabama does. But I also want to see his stature because, I'll be down there. So I'll be able to, like, kind of measure up, you know what I'm saying? See what he looks like. I want to see is it 6'2", or is it 6'1", 210 pounds, or is it 6'2", 220, right? Because now you're talking about the variations in how you can use him and where the NFL game is now, meaning that can he be a quarterback to where he runs the football 10 times a game, right? Like, and I think about, and I keep saying this, is that everybody, like you can't, complain about the caterpillar and rave about the butterfly, right? And it's the Jalen Hurts thing. It's like, okay, cool. Jalen Hurts is inaccurate. He can't do this. He can't do that, right? But then here he goes. His team is in another NFC championship with him being the quarterback, and he has led a team to a Super Bowl, right? And I look at it from the perspective of when Jalen Hurts first got started playing, right? Like, he was a guy that would QB power, QB counter, right? Doing those type of things. So if he's a bigger framed guy, right, than what we think, and he can be 225, 230 and take on that pound, and then it kind of changes the narrative, like, okay, of what exactly he can be. But also I want to see this, that if I had to say something with Jalen Milroe, running ability, is that I don't think it's the elusiveness of like a Jaden Daniels or Lamar Jackson, right? So even just seeing him scramble out of the pocket. I just want to see him move around, right? Like how does he move in person? How is his straight line speed? Like how explosive, like, you know, just being there watching and how explosive is his straight line speed? Because I think he can, you know, like I said, pick up good gains and things like that, but he may be a guy that you have to keep moving forward at all times. So I'm excited too to see Jalen Milroe because I think more than just a toolsy guy, like he's shown that he can make plays. Like it's just people have questions maybe about the consistency, but I would put him more in the Jalen Hurts, the question of the bucket of a Lamar Jackson, as far as guys who's gotten it done in college. People just have question marks about them. And I always say this, is that they can't be compared to those guys if there aren't the question marks. So I think I go with those. I go with more of those comps than the Will Levis and the Anthony Richardson, because those guys, they just never did it in college. That's how I feel with those guys.
Yeah, with Milroe, I think right now, to be honest with you, especially with a guy like Will Howard walking into the same event, he's got to show out, because Will Howard has been on the tear the last month and maybe month or so of the season, won a national championship.
I called it. Everybody said I was crazy. Everybody said keep crazy. He don't know what he's talking about.
He did what he had to do. You know what I mean? So it's like with Milroe, you kind of, and honestly, even with Jackson Dart out there, like you have to throw the ball well. You got to throw the ball well enough to alleviate some of those, because he didn't finish the season as strong, right? The loss to Oklahoma, the loss to Michigan. Like you got to now rebound off of that, and this is an opportunity. It's crazy because it kind of goes both ways. If a guy has great tape during the season but it has a bad Senior Bowl, it hurts. If a guy has so-so tape during the season but has a great Senior Bowl, it helps. That's just the power of the Senior Bowl. I think for him, that's why I'm so excited to see Jalen. It's just to see what he's able to do. How does he stack days? The first day, okay, you get a mulligan. Everybody gets a mulligan on day one. It's day one of practice. But how do you look like midway through the second day of practice? Do you have command of the offense? Different things of that nature. And again, like just playing from the pocket, how accurate are you? I mean, heck, you watch that Georgia game, talk about his running ability. He doesn't have, like you said, he doesn't have that like change of direction that like a Jaden and Lamar, like, and plus those are different body types. Both of those guys are leaner, more cut. He's a lot more muscle on his frame than those guys, you know, coming out of college. But like his explosiveness and dynamic ability, that like plant and go, like it's dangerous. We watched that. Like I've never seen anybody make Georgia look slow. That's what Jalen Milroe did in that. And like I said, that game, I always go back to that game. It's like that's the ceiling for him, where he was able to throw the ball extremely well in that game at all three levels, beat you with his arm. And then when you dropped off in the coverage or you tried to send the blitz and you get out of your rush lanes, now my rushing ability, that top tier rushing ability comes into play. And now I gash you for 80 yards in the game and a touchdown. And just I think he might have had 2 rushing touchdowns in that game. I think he had like 5 touchdowns total. He was elite in that game. And I think you won't be able to see that in the midst of the Senior Bowl practice, but I just think that if he can go out here and have a good week, I'm excited to see just how he plays out. But we've talked about Jackson Dart multiple times. I'm excited to see him too, because as we continue to say, we got to get you away from that. We got to extrapolate you from the Ole Miss Lane Kiffin offense. How do you handle the pro concepts, those pro reads? The thing I consistently knock him on, truthfully, has been processing. Like how fast of a processor you are and how quickly, or do you get to the second read at all? Like, you know what I mean? It's like, well, I'm so used to the isolated one-on-one guy. I'm so used to Trey Harris being open. I'm so used to like the specific concept, getting Juice Wells or my tight end or Caden Press corner, whoever open. Then when they're not open, I don't go to the second and third read. I need to see Jackson Dart play from the neck up. I think physically he has the NFL skill set, but playing from the neck up and playing with anticipation, playing with quick processing and quick decision making, that's what I'm looking forward to seeing from him. That's why I'm excited to watch him.
Yeah, I mean, and everybody know how I feel about Will Howard at this point, as far as the intrigue, right, and seeing what he could do. But the other guy I'm looking for, and we talked about him already, is Dylan Gabriel. Just watching him sling the rock, watch what he can do out there at practice. Like I said, see how live his arm is, because I went back and I watched both Ohio State games, and why it may not be a arm where he can throw it 80 yards, couple 50-yard bombs, right? Like, and I think he can let it loose. So I want to see if he outperforms what his stature is. If people saying, okay, he's small, so that means he has a weak arm, right? Like if he has an average NFL arm, average to above average, then I think that's plenty good enough for him. But DP, let's keep this thing going and flowing, man. And we're on to the playmakers, man. Which playmakers, wide receivers, tight ends, do we want to see the most? What are we looking for? Headlines, storylines for the wide receiver, tight end position coming up next.
As a small business owner, your work doesn't end when the clock hits 5. Your business is always on your mind, which means it's time to hire. You need a partner that works just as hard as you. That's where LinkedIn comes in. When you clock out, LinkedIn clocks in. LinkedIn makes it easy to post your job for free and share it with your network and get qualified candidates all in one place. Post your job. LinkedIn's new feature can help you write job descriptions and then quickly get your job in front of the right people with deep candidate insights. And here's a pro tip. Add the hashtag hiring frame to your profile picture to double your reach to qualified candidates. No wonder 72% of small businesses say LinkedIn helps them find high quality hires. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Playmakers that we're excited to see down in Mobile here at the Senior Bowl this week. Keith, in practice, I'm looking at Utah State wide receiver Jalen Royals. Guys, he's healthy coming off of that injury that took, I think he got hurt like probably the halfway point of the season. I really liked watching him on tape. You know what I mean? I think he's listed at, I believe, like 6 foot, if I remember correctly. We'll see. I think, as we know, schools don't always tell the truth. So yeah, he's listed at 6 foot, 205. And this is a guy that came off of a season last year with 70 catches, over 1,000 yards, and he had 15 receiving touchdowns. He only played 6, maybe 7 games. He already had almost 900 yards receiving and 6 touchdowns this year before getting hurt. And I think I'm excited to see him in the one-on-ones, like seeing his process against these. We have a good variety of corners. We talked about that last week, Keith, with like Ezariah Thomas and Maxwell Harrison and Noel Williams. So you're going to have guys who have the height and body type and arm length. Then you have other guys who are more twitchy, more quick-footed. I'm excited to just see Jalen Royals, for one, gauge his athleticism in person, see exactly what type of athlete he is. Does he win? Is his burst and acceleration off the ball, is it instant? Is it immediate? Right? Can he immediately put you on your heels as a defensive back and threaten you vertically? Or is he going to be more of a, probably not like more of a stronger slot receiver? Like where are you going to land for a team? Are you going to be that Z receiver? Because I don't think he's going to live at the X. The X is, 6'2", 6'3", the prototype. That's what they teams typically look for with that. But I think his route running for on tape is good. Yards after catch ability is good. He can create for himself once he gets the ball in his hands. This is opportunity for him, as we always talk about with a lot of guys, not so much off the beaten path, but out of sight, out of mind, whether it's due to the injury or just playing at Utah State and nobody watching Utah State. This is all his opportunity to kind of plug in that spotlight yourself and then put it right where you want it and go stand underneath it. This is your opportunity to do that.
Yeah, no, I like that call out, DP. And I have 2 guys. My first guy is Jalen Noel from Iowa State, right?
Yeah.
I think he can be the guy that can steal the show. I know we talked about Tez Johnson, and I jumped into Tez Johnson's film and I like him. I just don't believe that he's of the same ilk at this moment. Yeah. Of the Tank Dells and the Roman Wilsons, guys that we watched in the past. And honestly, he reminds me of his teammate that came out last year. Troy. He reminds me of Troy, the 5'9" version of Troy, as far as usage and what they do and strength and weaknesses, to be completely honest. But Jalen Noel, I think he has the start-stop ability, the electricity, the fluid mover, change of direction. I think he can be somebody that can steal the show, right? He can be the guy that the defensive backs fear covering. Now, the other guy I'm looking forward to watching, because I had some interesting thoughts when I got into his film, and that was Pat Bryant, the wide receiver from Illinois, 6'2", 6'3", 200 pounds, smooth mover, transitions better than what you think, can sink his hips better than what you think for a big body guy. But also he has some open field acceleration /
Yeah.
ability to break tackles. Pat Bryant is a guy that I'm excited about. And I coming out of this, if you look at the rest of this wide receiver class, I wouldn't hesitate to put him in the second round because of his big frame, his ability to go up, get the football. And like I said, his ability to accelerate, decelerate. And it's almost, I thought about the Cincinnati Bengals. Could this be a T. Higgins light type situation? That's what I thought about him. I think this guy has the talent. I just need to see in person because obviously he didn't get press man coverage all the time, right?
Yeah.
Like, how does he consistently negotiate with that? But then also, I want to see his foot speed, right? Even if it's press man and he's running a go route, he gets on top of the defensive back. Does he separate from him, or does the defensive back stay in stride? And it's not that. But I think at the very worst, he can be a big power slot for you. But I think there's a potential that this guy can give you flashes of an XY receiver and doing some things of that nature. So I like Pat Bryant.
No, I like both of those name pulls, Keith. I'm gonna start with Jalen Noel. I was watching him last night because I'm working on his scouting report, and the foot speed and foot quickness at the line of scrimmage. Like, I was watching him against. You remember I was really high on Sebastian Castro, coming off of summer scouting and everything, older prospect. But like they matched up a lot in that game, Iowa versus Iowa State, and he was putting him in hell. Like, he was putting him in some very conflicting situations when they went into tight man-to-man coverage. His foot fire, the placement of his feet when he jab steps, things like that, and how quickly he transitions at the top of his breaks to separate. Yeah, no, I think this is the guy that, we like I said, we were at the Senior Bowl when Tank Dell came out and how DBs were, all right, we're making some business decisions out here. Like, I don't want to go up there right now. Like, he's already cooked the last 3 guys. I don't want to be put on that highlight reel. Like, I think Jalen Noel has that type of ability, and I think the main thing for him is going to be just using his hands more when guys do want to get physical, because he has the foot quickness and acceleration and burst to get by you at the line of scrimmage. It's more so using his hands to stay free. And with Pat Bryant, I think I gave him a late third, and it was because of the questions I have about the immediate foot speed, like the winning the foot races. It's just out the gate. But like you said, for him to be 6'3", and he's alignment versatile. Like, he'll line up in the slot and be a power slot if you need him to. He lines up at the X and the Z spot. And for me, when I was watching him, to watch him sink his hips and run some of the routes he was running for a tall, long leg guy, I think I comped him to Rashad Bateman and how smooth, because Rashad Bateman is a very smooth route runner. We saw him kind of take that step this year, being healthy, gaining that trust with Lamar Jackson for the Ravens, and he was routing guys up. Now, he doesn't always bring down every catch, but he was getting open. And I think with Pat Bryant, that is the question I need, because I'll bump his grade up if he shows me some good athleticism. Post catch, I'm with you. Like, his acceleration after the catch is legit. Like, he pulls away from some guys. I'm like, where is that sometimes early in the stem? Like, it's just like guys are with him and in his hip pocket. So looking forward to seeing and just gauging his athleticism overall. But Keith, tight ends, we talked about Jake Brenning-Stool and Mason Taylor, and even especially, my guy Harold Fannin Jr. last week. But I'm looking forward to seeing Elijah Arroyo from Miami, Keith. I'm looking forward to seeing this dude, athletic, did a lot of different things for Miami's offense. I think he might have been like a 1-year breakout guy, if I remember correctly. And like, he was one of the, outside of Restrepo, there were times at 6'4", 245 pounds, where he looked like the best pass catcher for Cam Ward this year. He had almost 600 yards receiving. He averaged 17 yards per catch this year with 7 touchdowns. The athleticism is there. He catches the ball well. I don't believe he had many drops on the season either. So I think, he only had 1 drop all season. I think for him is just really kind of showcasing what his full array of skill set. Like, really putting putting his best foot forward in a loaded tight end group. I think it's paramount that guys that are here, like Harold Fannin is gonna have everybody's eyes, because it's Harold Fannin Jr. Coming off the season he's had. Jake Brenning-Stool and the rest of these guys, like, all these guys had a chance to really like ring the bell and say, listen, I'm one of the better tight ends in this class. I think blocking is going to be big for Arroyo. Like, how does he handle the blocking drills and everything? But I think with his height, weight, his body type, and then his athleticism, pre and post catch, I think this could be a guy that could be a riser into that early day 3 type of range in this loaded tight end group that we have for the 2025 NFL draft.
Yeah, DP, I'll even go more aggressive than that. I think he can jump into the day two bucket. Just off of pure athleticism. Like I
Yeah,
think he can get there. And because we talk about you talk about two guys that I would probably have graded higher than him, right? Like Gunnar Helm from Texas and Mason
yeah.
Taylor from LSU. I think his athletic ability might be a step ahead of them, right? Like just a
I
notch
agree.
ahead of them. And I think if he goes out there and wins his one-on-ones smoothly, people are going to get attracted to it and say, hey, this is a pass catching tight end, right? And you know how we like putting them in the slot and things like
Yep.
that. But also he has a frame that it's not a wiry frame, right? Like he's he looks to be 240, 245 pounds, well put together, thick lowers, upper body strength, things of that nature. So I think people even feel comfortable throwing him the football, and like just one of those he's one of those guys that you can end up running tight end screens for or something like that, right? Like you can get versatile in your usage for him. And especially if you have, I think about the Colts, right? If they want a tight end or something like that and need a playmaker at the tight end position, if they have to address another position in the first and second round, maybe they could grab him in the third or something like that. Like that could
That's
be
a good point.
he could be a good player for them. I like Elijah a decent amount, and of the tight ends, I think he has a lot to gain. And then obviously, I just want to see Harold Fannin run routes. Like what you know what I'm saying? I just want to see this bull in a china shop, get in and out of breaks and see what happens.
Yeah, Keith, it's crazy when you brought up Elijah Roy. I went and looked at his numbers. Like he averaged almost a first down after the catch. Like he averaged like 9 yards after the catch. And I think with him, especially like you brought up the Colts, that height at 6'5", 6. I want to see if is he 6'5", is he 6'4", but 6'4", 6'5", ball skills, athleticism. Yeah, he would be an instant upgrade for what they have in that room in Indianapolis. But that, like, seeing what he does after the catch, averages almost a first down is crazy.
Yeah, no, 100% with DP. Let's get to the running backs, man. Yes, this is the show. We're previewing the Senior Bowl, offensive players to watch. We're about to wrap this thing up with the running backs to watch. This is a deep running back class. We're going to talk about them coming up next.
Super Bowl 59 is here. One game, two teams, endless possibilities, and there's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Whether it's predicting the first touchdown, calling the MVP, or even betting on the coin toss, FanDuel makes it easy to get in on the action. With live betting all game long, you can adjust your bets as the game unfolds and feel the thrill from kickoff to the final whistle. The live betting feature lets you stay involved no matter what happens on the field, and the app is super easy to navigate. Plus, knowing that you can place a $5 bet and potentially win $200 in bonus bets for the Super Bowl, that is what we call icing on the cake. Download the app and head to FanDuel.com to get started. Bet just $5, and if you win, you'll score $200 back in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com to get started. Bet FanDuel, official partner of Super Bowl 59. Thank you for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today and every day. Shout out for being our everydayers. Running backs to watch. These are the guys you need to watch, right? Like, forget the quarterbacks. You know what I mean? These are the guys that you need to be tuning into. Keith, I got to go to UCF. RJ Harvey, 5'9", 205. Keith, I think I got to look at my report. I think I comped him to DeAndre Swift, if I remember correctly. I think I comped him to DeAndre Swift. This dude is like, he's got burst, he's got acceleration. I love his ability to cut, like exchange gaps and be elusive.
DP, it's the footwork. He may have the best footwork. Like you're talking about going through bag drills, like the footwork. I can't even remember. It wasn't even from this year. It was last year's game while I was watching him heading into the summer, and it was just a play behind the line of scrimmage. And I'm like, oh, like, wow, like that's beautiful footwork. You're talking about picking them up and putting them down, right? Getting in and out of gaps. I'm right there with you. Like he's a guy he's at the top of my list.
He's a fun dude to watch, Keith. I think he knows how to negotiate quick backfield penetration. Yep. Like watching him, and I think I put up some clips on social media a while back. Like to watch him press a gap and then jump cut outside the tackle box and then get vertical. Like I've talked about. That's the stuff I wish that I got. If I could get that from Ashton Genty, like that lateral explosiveness. Oh yeah, it opens up the floodgates of what I can do with you, because I know that if you press and the linebacker fills, you can get away from it rather than just trying to power through everything. And
DP,
no, my comp for him was Austin Eckler. My bad. My comp for him was Austin Eckler, who's with the Commanders, who's with the Chargers. One of those short, and he can catch the ball in the backfield. Like he's going. I think this guy has a chance to really make himself some money.
Yeah, DP, when you said I wish that I could, I thought you were about to say you wish that you could do. I'm like, DP trying to put the pads back on and get out of there. Get out there.
Brother,
go ahead.
Not a chance. Not this 35-year-old. Not happening, bro.
I thought you were about to say that's the stuff you wish you could do. I was like, okay, we about to write a Scott report on DP. So I'm right there with you. Next, it's quite a few names, DP, because this running back class so loaded. The thing is, I'm gonna make this statement first, though, is that why this is so important for the running backs. And I don't know if you have them graded the same way, right? But so many of these guys I have is third, fourth rounders, right? It's like every time I finish watching, I'm like, this a starter, this a guy with developmental traits to be a starter. This could be a guy that takes off in the NFL, right? Like all of these guys, they're right there in that same bucket. So I think the reason that the Senior Bowl is going to be so important is because they get to start separating themselves, right? Like you get to start to see it in person. But the next guy I want to go with, DP, is Khalil Mullings out of Michigan, right? And because he had such a, first of all, a slow start to the season, right? Because it was Donovan Edwards, RB1, right? But then he took over, proved to be more effective and efficient running the football, right? And then it was really like a hot moment, right? He probably had about 6 to 8 weeks where he kind of dominated, maybe 6 weeks, right? And then it kind of tailed it off to where his name is not talked about as much. I want to see this big boy. I think he's listed at 6 foot, 6'1", 225 pounds, right? And some of the things we've seen on film earlier was him being able to, have good footwork, get in and out of creases, jump cut, things like that. Because if he can string that together, then it's like, okay, now where do you put him versus the Devin Neals, right? Where do you put him versus the Ollie Gordons, right? Because another big power back that looks like he can be the, it's always these guys that I don't know why this name always pops in my head when I get a 6'1", 220 running back who has average to above average athleticism, like Jordan Howard's, right? Like Jordan Howard's, David Montgomery's, right? Like I think of those guys every time I get in that category because I think those are like adequate big back starters, right? And so I look at Khalil Mullings and can he be a guy that like gets the momentum back going in his favor? Like, he can play with the rest of these guys.
No, 100% like that. And that power, right? Like the power he runs with, like just showcase what you can do. And like, what is your ceiling? What's the floor? Like, are you a RB2 to a scat back type situation, right? You think about the Detroit Lions eventually, like I think they gave David Montgomery a contract extension, but when he went down, I think they had a serviceable back behind him as Jahmyr Gibbs is, in my opinion, has ushered himself into that elite running back type of tier in just 2 years in the NFL. Like I think him and Bijan, those guys are in that tier. But if you lose a David Montgomery, having a Khalil Mullings, who's right there in your backyard to be the hammer, right? The Lindell White to Jahmyr Gibbs, Reggie Bush, I think that's a really good situation for him. Because I got to go to Syracuse, though. I got two guys. Syracuse's LaQuint Allen, 6 foot, 201. I think this is a guy that when they go to one-on-ones with backers and running backs, linebackers and running backs, he's the guy that's going to cause some problems. Because like Syracuse will put him in the slot and run actual routes with him, and like he breaks like a receiver and different things. I'm like, yo, this dude might put somebody on the highlight reel.
Yeah, I have to finish him up, DP. But our guy Ryan Fowler, like he watched him and he was like, I like this guy a lot. This guy from Syracuse, I like him a lot. Bro.
But it's which is wild because the fact that you got Kyle McCord, he was throwing the ball nearly 50 times a game. Right. I'm like, he still ran for over 1,000 yards. He also had over 500, almost 530 yards receiving. I think he might be the guy that could stand out as the best pure back in terms of running the ball, but also being an actual weapon out of the backfield, not the functional shallow stuff. But yeah, you want to go empty and like get that matchup with a linebacker. I don't have to just run the Texas route out of the backfield. I can run slants. I can run whip routes. I can go vertical. I can run quick hitches. I can run receiver routes out of the slot and out of wide receiver position. So absolutely looking forward to seeing him. And then my guy, Woody Marks, man. Woody Marks he's good. Like similar to RJ Harvey when it was a shorter, low center gravity backs who's incredibly shifty. His burst is legit. Like he accelerates very well. And I think he's just like with with him, with I'm RJ Harvey. With RJ Harvey, I think Woody Marks has a chance to put some guys like you talking about those run drills, hitting the hole, his ability to two-step and cut, and that acceleration after he cuts. I think he can really put guys kind of on his highlight reel and really kind of help himself because he's built similar to the USC running back that got drafted to Green Bay last year.
Marshawn Lloyd.
Yeah, he's built similar to Marshawn, but to me, he's a much better athlete in terms of dynamic ability, explosiveness, and burst, acceleration, and he catches. Like I think 1 year at Mississippi State, he had like 80 receptions. Like he's got like well over 250 receptions in his career.
Yeah, so he's a fifth-year senior, right? And that was in 2021. But since then, I mean, 80 receptions, right? But he followed it up in 2022 with 48, and then in 2024 he had 47, right? So a guy who's proven consistently he can catch the ball out of the backfield, right? At the end, I
comped him to DeAndre Swift. I had him and RJ mixed up. RJ, I comped to Austin Eckler. I comped him to DeAndre Swift.
Woody Marks. Okay, well, yeah, that's definitely somebody. And I watched him. I guess I had a couple more question marks about him, that I want to see play out. But he is a guy that I have circled. Like, hey, let me see what this guy does, right? Because I think I want to bump him in that tier with the RJ Harveys and those guys. But there was a couple question marks I had about him on film, like just open field burst and acceleration and did negotiating with backfield pressure, things like that. But good football player, and he's sturdy too, right? Like you think he's a sturdy back. I think at the very worst he can serve as the role. Man, I'm blanking on the guy he played Texas he backed up Bijan.
Is it Jaden? No, Jonathan Brooks.
Not Jonathan Brooks. He's with the Chicago Bears now. Roshan Johnson. I think at the very worst, I think he's somewhere in that bucket, right? Like he can come in, spell you
kind of change of pace, spell back.
Yep. I think at the very worst, but I like both of those guys. I'm real quick, DP, and it's just that's what's so fun about this. I talk about the comps, right? I want to see RJ Harvey versus Trevor Etienne, right? From Georgia, right? Because they're very similar statures and in flashes of what they can do. I think RJ Harvey has been more consistent throughout his career, but I want to see Trevor. Hey, was that Georgia or is that you, right? Like where does this fall in as far as you not being as productive? And then the last guy that I want to check out is Donovan Edwards. And Donovan Edwards, not from a running perspective, but I just finished him up. And the thing is that I want to see if there's an opportunity for him to play wide receiver. Should we be looking at this guy as like one of those old, and I'm not saying his name, it's just the first person that popped up, like how Dexter McCluster was used, DeAnthony Thomas when he got in the NFL, right? Like, obviously
he's got the body type for it. He's 6'1",
he's built more like a wide receiver, and I think he can catch the ball fairly well. So I want to see if he fights to get reps at wide receiver, but then also in the one-on-ones, like, is he going to be a guy that's going to push vertical, like really show off because I'm really confident in my hands, right? Like really push the gas pedal to be like, nah, this is where I'm going to separate myself. And I think he can put himself in a bucket of an offensive weapon instead of just solely a running back, because that has just been kind of hit and miss, right, for Donovan Edwards. So
I like that a lot, Keith. I think especially not having the greatest final year, because they did the same thing with Blake Corum. It was him and Blake Corum. It was him and Khalil Mullings this year. And I think we might have had this conversation a couple years ago when at the Draft Network on some of our meetings that he might be a wide receiver playing running back. Like I would like to see him play full-time wide receiver and see what that looks like, because he's another guy with his height and build that they did put in the slot over his career and let him run routes. And I was like, he's really effective in this role. Maybe he needs to make his position change, and hey, you get paid more at receiver anyway, so why not? I think that's a good call out, Keith. Maybe we will see if the coaching staff allows him to take some reps at wide receiver, and if so, I think he can have, if he has some success, it's going to create a conversation around him.
Yeah, that might be something I stick with, DP, the Dexter McCluster rule. I might stick with that for Donovan Edwards. That might be a good situation for him. But DP, that wraps up another episode, man, of the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast. I want to end this podcast off by saying shout out to our everydayers. Thank you for tapping in with us each and every single day. Every listener is greatly appreciated here. I am Keith Sanchez. You can find me on X at The Talent Code. That right there is my guy, my co-host, Mr. Damian Parson. You can find him on X at DP_NFL. And like we like to say, man, y'all come talk to us because we like to talk back.
Go subscribe and follow for free on YouTube, wherever you listen to podcasts, to get the latest episode as soon as it is available. Guys, on tomorrow's show, we are getting into the defensive prospects that we're excited to see and that you need to be watching as practice starts the same day. So come and join the conversation again tomorrow on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.